Canada's #1, The Suya Spot. Serving and satisfying your suya needs from multiple locations across the GTA, including Scarborough, Toronto, Woodbridge, and Mississauga. Also located in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Visit any location today or stay home and order through
DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Skip the Dishes.
For more information, check out our website at www.thesuyaspot.com or call the toll-free line at +1 866 448 7892. The Suya Spot. You built it, now use it. Vous l'avez construit, utilisez-le. Canada's #1 African barbecue, The Suya Spot. Serving and satisfying your suya needs from multiple locations across the GTA, including Scarborough, Toronto, Woodbridge, and Mississauga. Also located in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Visit any location today or stay home and order through
DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Skip the Dishes.
For more information, check out our website at www.thesuyaspot.com or call the toll-free line at +1 866 448 7892. The Suya Spot.
Welcome. My name is Jermaine Henry, and I am here with AfroFest leader Peter. Peter, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I feel blessed to be a part of AfroFest this year, even though it's a unique way. I remember going by Woodbine Beach and always going in. There'll be drumming, there'll be art all around. Just, it's a vibe, cultural vibe.
Yes, it is.
How are y'all managing with COVID? How are you gonna do this year?
Believe me, it has been really, really difficult, especially transitioning from an event where you have hundreds of thousands of people to one in which you're dealing with computers, we're dealing with a set and or whatnot. That has been a bit challenging, but irrespective of how challenging things may be, we always find a way to do something to engage our community, and this is one of them.
Ooh, okay, so normally it's about 9 days, it's in person. So it's gonna be virtual this year, and I'm a part of something special, but what do you have going on for the AfroFest this year?
Yeah, so right now, AfroFest actually started on the 16th of this month, so we've been running it now for 9 days. It started as a virtual event, and then we did 2 days and a drive-in. So we had artists go, and this is just an opportunity for people to come out of their houses.
Yeah.
It's not a full experience, but just part of it, you know. Then we went back to our virtual, we have over 30 artists performing. And then the interesting part is we understand at this point that even though Canada is opening up, Africa is closing down. Because the COVID-19 is kind of increasing. Mm-hmm. So we decided to do something, and knowing that this is what already happened in India. India has an experience in dealing with this, and they're still dealing with it.
Yeah.
And India is very close to East Africa and Africa in general. So we felt it's important to have a panel discussion with people from East Africa and people who have got experience in India, just to talk about what it is like, and to see, okay, is there something that has been learned from what has happened in India that can be adopted in Africa? So we're trying to touch as much as possible.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad because I'm a part of this. Yeah, I'm a part of this panel. But I love the relationship that I think is happening with our cultures, because even that conversation, which you're gonna be able to tune in soon, is how our food, our music, right? Those are things that have to do with how we relate with each other. And honestly, it helps to build solidarity. So I really hope that whoever's tuning in for this panel discussion, that they feel like a sense of connection and also a sense of what can we do to help?
Yes, it's important. The work that we do and the work that you do is important, because I feel irrespective of what happens to us, we always need to connect with our community. We always need to connect with our culture. There is this element, I read an article a few days ago, we said during COVID-19, a lot of people are depressed. After staying home for so long, it affects you mentally.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure that even through this, we find ways of telling people that it's not the end, you know, there are things that we can do to come together. This is one of them, and I appreciate you taking your time talking to me. So yeah, that's nice.
This has been good. I'm glad you heard it first from Peter, and check out our panel with some amazing panelists who are really gonna speak about how can we address this COVID-19 resurgence that's going on in India and how it's affecting Africa, and most specifically East Africa. And what are ways that what do we need to be aware of, but also what can we do to help? And this is an example of how we can still show excellence in the midst of tragedy, in the midst of a pandemic. We are still bringing you Afrofest. So welcome to Afrofest. My name is Jermaine Henry. I am the moderator for today. And today we're going to be exploring this long history of cultural exchange between India and Africa, more specifically East Africa. India is in the midst of a COVID-19 surge, and this surge is migrated to Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Somalia, and other parts in the African continent. The pandemic has triggered a series of interlinked extremities, and global cooperation and collaboration is urgently needed. So, to ensure our shared survival, we're exploring India and East Africa, and in depth looking at the perspectives of today. So I'm going to go through how things are going to go today. I'm going to share intros to our lovely panelists, amazing panelists today, and then we're going to ask the questions and talk about our shared culture and the interdependencies of our survival with India and East Africa. So I'm excited to share with you our panelists for today. We got Karim. Karim has created the Elevate Talent Program and leads it as well. Karim has led in various sectors, including retail, health, education, architecture, and open space planning, urban planning, cultural spaces, museums, parks, you name it. Throughout his career, Karim has built a broad base of functional set of skills, traversing from strategy, planning, cross-cultural communication, relationship management, change management strategies, business process design, financial system development, revenue enhancement, operational aspects. Karim's gonna have a lot of good things to say today. Next, we have Osobe, who is actually Toronto-based Ethiopian Somali Francophone, editor-in-chief of Six Buzz, graduated from University of Toronto with a specialty in journalism and news media diploma from Centennial College. Before Six Buzz, she worked at Narcity, Star, Toronto Star, and the Canadian Press, Vice, and CBC. Amazing. Last but not least, we got the great Burleson. Burleson is a multi-dimensional and multidisciplinary artist. Based in Toronto, he has previously lived in Paris, France, was born and raised in Congo and Gabon, Central Africa. His international background and experience widely is open with his vision, and his world has really, let me bring that back. And his experience widely opened his vision of the world and plays a huge role in his creativity. Mainly known as a rapper and musician and spoken word artist, Burleson brings an Afrofuturism vibe to it in everything he does, really. So, are you excited? Are you ready? We're gonna have a conversation now. First question I have to our panelists. Are y'all ready for this?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, let's go. I'm actually gonna start with you, actually. I'm gonna start with you. So, we're in this unprecedented time, right? Where globally we're seeing that we're all going through these crises. However, in your professional world, how is this highlighting your own cultural background and where you come from? How are you thinking about your culture as you go into your professional work in today's global world?
So that's a really good question. So first of all, I think one thing to realize is that a lot of the migration that happened from India, which is West India, into East Africa, were primarily professionals and entrepreneurs. So there's always been that notion that when you go there, it was about growth. It wasn't about just moving there, but it was really around opportunities and creating the opportunities and building economies as we grow along. By the way, I always forget, we were born in the Congo together. So that's the interesting part. Like, I was actually born in the Congo. My mom was born in Tanzania. My father is from South Africa, but grew up back in India. And then I lived in South America, so I grew up in South America. So my journey's been actually quite different to get to Canada. And I say this because it's important to understand that cultural dimensions move with us as we move continents, right? So that doesn't go away from us. But what this pandemic has heightened to me is that we live in an interconnected community, and that community is a global community today. So what we do here today, we can actually easily do anywhere else. And we can support communities globally today, and we don't actually have to go there anymore. So I think that is one thing that I've definitely seen coming out of this, and where I see opportunities to build those non-traditional alliances between East and West.
Beautiful. I wonder if there's more, is there anything you want to piggyback off of that?
I mean, maybe also because
Yeah, I can add to that. I mean, what stands out from your question for me about how my culture influences like my professional life. So I'm half Somali, half Ethiopian, and Somalia just recently celebrated their independence on July 1st. So for me, it's always a reminder of like how far we've come as a nation. On top of that, I come from a culture where women are the leaders of their communities. So for me to be in a position of leadership, being an editor-in-chief, that makes me really proud, and it makes my community really proud because you know, my mom like leads my household, and she's an amazing woman. So I think she's very proud that I'm leading my household, but in a different way. I think women who are millennials, like we're growing up in an age where we're less about family, but more about like work right now. I mean, family will come in time, and it's super important to me. But for my mom, that was her goal, you know, being a mother, which is so important. So I'm still doing that, but in a different capacity. So it means a lot to me to be able to kind of give back to my community in a way that I've grown up seeing the women around me be strong. So it's kind of like a full circle for all of us, and it means a lot to me.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because now you're leading, you know, you're editor-in-chief, you're leading, and honestly, I'm sure there's a lot of care you have to bring on your team, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Burleson.
I mean, what I can add maybe to piggyback what Karim said is that there's definitely more similarity, I feel, between like the cultures of the South, those countries and areas of the world that we call the South. There's definitely more things in common, that things that kind of like make us being different. And it's interesting to me to see that actually there's way more and more collaboration between those cultures and those populations. And we really actually taking those cultures and traditions with us wherever we go. And at the end of the day, it's more about staying true to who you are while actually finding your place wherever you decide to go and create opportunities for yourself and for your family and your community.
And I guess in these times that we're in such unprecedented times, urgent times, we're going through this pandemic, how important it is for these collaborations and for these connections of cross-culture? How do you see it coming into play now?
I mean, when it comes to this global situation, right, so we're in a situation where it's a pandemic, and we definitely all realize that that virus doesn't really discriminate. So I think to me that should wear awareness in the sense that we all are affected by a common problem or like a common enemy, and that should actually show how all of us across the globe, we should collaborate more in order to actually find common solutions, right? Even though maybe the approach might be a little bit different, but the end goal is literally like to be able to survive and make it through that pandemic and grow from there, right? So, and that's what actually been visible, like the collaboration between many countries, scientists, and things like that. So hopefully we're going to see more actually collaboration and more unity between cultures, especially when we have, again, a pandemic and a virus that doesn't, you know, discriminate. It's affecting literally everybody everywhere. So, yeah. And
I'll even open it to, or even go even closer to, are we seeing it with India and East Africa? Are you seeing some of that connection?
Yeah, so I'm going to interrupt, because I think the important part that we forget about is actually accessibility discrimination. Right? So if you want to, it's an issue we all have to deal with, right? There's no wrong answer. The right answer is to create accessibility, right? So when you look at even the disparity in India, where it has major production facilities of vaccines, but are all going outside of India, that is almost like internal discrimination from a financial perspective.
Interesting.
So why is it that vaccines, where are sitting around everywhere, aren't being distributed? So to me, I think culturally there's an issue, but there's also an accessibility issue that's a greater issue that we all need to start looking at. And if you take it back to where we are today, we see accessibility discrimination even in Canada. Like if you think about where vaccines are available versus not available, you know, you actually look at communities of Black, Indigenous, and people of color where vaccination rates are lower compared to everywhere else at the beginning. Now they're picking up, of course. So I think even culturally, these communities are aligned in different ways and trying to improve the basic realms that they have together, right? You see a lot of work being done around brown people to support Black people, right? We realize that being brown, that we actually have a set of privilege already embedded within us. So that's reality. It is what it is. And I have to come to terms with that also.
One thing interesting, like in some of the work I've done with actually one of our sponsors, MyG Platform, who's doing this COVID response, is I found out that because of what's going on in India with the vaccines and everything, the situation, it affects actually Uganda, because they're planning on actually getting some of their vaccines from India.
Yep.
When you're going to get medical supplies and whatnot, they go to India. So I wonder, you're just speaking to that, how it's real life accessibility, right? Issues that are there.
True, and a lot of it boils down to dollars and cents, right? So where are the dollars and cents and where is the accessibility? I think we as a community have to do much better as a global community to address the continents where we see the highest risk to start forming before it gets there, right? So Africa was a wonderful continent in the sense that it didn't have as many initial issues around COVID as it is having today. So imagine if it was suppressed there at the initial stages through the COVAX programming, then it probably wouldn't be in the situation it's going to be in the next year.
Interesting.
So it's just taking different perspectives as to accessibility to vaccines. You know, being somebody who family is from East Africa primarily, I'm like, this isn't good, right? So we see this and we have those challenges within us now being Indian, and even Indians in East Africa face it fairly hard because they have privilege there. And that's the reality of it, right? So
Yeah, just to add, I feel like I agree with both of you guys. I mean, you mentioned that how, you know, the vaccine doesn't discriminate. It'll kill anyone. It'll kill a billionaire the same way it'll kill a homeless man. But I also agree with you in the sense of like, there is discrimination in where you're getting your vaccines, who's a priority versus other people. And when you think about like the numbers in India and how outrageous they are, I mean, 17 million people, you know, caught COVID, and that's just reports back in April. I reported a little bit about it myself, and one stat that I got from Al Jazeera English, for example, is the COVID-19 cases were equivalent to one person dying every 5 minutes. And I just kind of think about if we had that in Canada, there'd be outrage nationally. Yes. Like it wouldn't go down like that. You know, European countries would come to our aid. So when you talk about how people depend on India and other countries, we're just kind of all just spending for ourselves in a way.
Wow.
So, you know, even with Canada giving oxygen tanks to India because there was a hashtag going on, you know, India can't breathe. You know, doctors had to turn people away just because they didn't have enough oxygen tanks for their ICUs. So it just reminds us of like how privileged we are to live here, whether you're a Canadian, like you're Indian and you're Canadian, or you're East African and you live in Canada. Like I might live here, but I'll never understand what they're going through back home. I can only feel it because they're my people, they look like me. But then bottom line, they're human.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is pretty sad to see how this has kind of been playing out in front of our eyes. And I guess all we can do is just kind of hope and just do the most that we can through like government reform and all that stuff, yeah.
There's something that you're speaking to, I wonder if we can get on, is like, it seems like communication is very important, of just even knowing what's going on. Like even for me, even having a little bit of knowledge of how vaccines are going to Uganda from India, that's because I'm in relationship with people, right? And you're speaking to even how social media, like how are we communicating between cultures with each other to help in this time, you know?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely first, I would say, at the leadership level, because most of the time in those countries, the way the people operate is like you always like look up to the people that are being elected, and then you actually expecting them to take the lead and make decisions for the population. But at the same time, we're literally also living in survival mode in many of these areas where literally, from some testimony, people were like, okay, sure, should I stay home and maybe die of hunger because every day is when I go out to make my money and make my bread, or should I just wait? And so at some point it's more about finding a balance between being maybe like killed by a virus or maybe killed by hunger.
Wow.
And when you don't really see that the leaders are like, communicating efficiently, putting in place, measures and things like that, then that can be very disturbing and confusing for the populations, right? And then I feel like, communication and putting in place measures from the leadership level first, then definitely would help. Because even getting those vaccines shipped from India, for instance, to East Africa, then you also need some infrastructure, you also need some staffing, all of that. So definitely first I would say the leadership level, but it's also beautiful to see a lot of NGOs or local movements that are also doing the work as best as possible with the resources that they have in place right now.
Sorry, I like the fact that we mentioned like social media, like going back to like, the hashtag India can't breathe.
Yeah.
Although these things are important for us to know what's going on, sometimes I feel like that's where it ends. It ends with that hashtag, it ends with that conversation until people start applying pressure to like, politicians to do more. And what this pandemic showed me was just, again, the privilege that we have. COVID was obviously rampant, but we were at home watching Netflix. We were, locked down. We were upset that we couldn't go to restaurants and, go out. But of course, that's our reality and that's fine. But we still have to remember that other people, like you said, it's like, if I go to the market today, will I die? Because I know that if I get sick, there's not going to be an ICU. There's not going to be a vaccine for me. The same way that, me being here, if I fall to the ground, an ambulance is going to come pick me up and take care of me. But that's not the same in, other parts of the world.
Absolutely.
Anything, Krim, anything you want to even mention about this COVID response that you're seeing?
So I think the COVID response has been really interesting. For me, when I look at it and, especially from a perspective of representation, I think to me that's been a really big issue for me. It's that, there was an article that came out with the Globe and Mail and a map of Toronto, and when it showed vaccine intensity rates and application rates and usage rates, it had like this stream going right down the middle of Toronto that was all lit up to say first vaccines, fully vaccinated, happening down this corridor first, and then a little bit on the sides, and then nothing in the middle, like nothing in the other areas. What that showed me really clearly is that no matter where you came from in terms of race, gender, or any other form of that nature, if you lived in the spine of Toronto, you were more likely to be vaccinated and had access to vaccines than in any other situation possible. And that was reality, and we knew that, and we saw that, right? So I think what needs to happen is that this needs to be taken as a case of learning. So a lot of times what happens in situations like today is that we keep looking backwards but not looking forward. So my thoughts around all of this is that, we've learned a lot from this pandemic, and there's going to be another one. And what we have to realize is that COVID response has to be representational. COVID response has to be by the hardest hit communities and the most likely to be hardest hit communities first. And then you can filter it out, because the areas of privilege along the spine probably needed it last. They're the ones that have 5,000 square foot homes, access to funding, ability to order in food, all those things of nature. We need to think about the people that are most affected, that actually serve in many cases the people along the spine to go get groceries, to go get their pharmacies. And that's the way I think we need to change our discussion about representation, and not just underrepresented communities, but how do we actually represent the society that we live within?
Beautifully said. I'm really curious of like how we express these messages, right? Because I think there's something about getting the message out there, and a lot of things that I see from our shared cultures, when you talk about India and you talk about Africa, more specifically East Africa, it's like we know how to get people involved, whether it be through a drum, whether it be through a song, whether it be through food, right? These are different ways, because I realize we're talking about all these, heavy things, but at the end of the day, we got to connect as people for the message to get there and to build that relationship, because without that relationship, we won't necessarily care enough to take action. So what are you seeing of like cultural ways that we can see our cultures come together to take action?
I mean, again, to me, it's just really like trying to really strengthen the relationship between those areas of the South, because we saw where, again, the response to COVID, there was a lot of like discrimination and also a lot of like privilege that we really were witnessing. So I really feel like if those countries of the South, so let's say India and many parts of Africa, especially the east side of Africa, really strengthen their relationship and not necessarily wait for leadership from First Nation, if I can say like that, then I think we can see definitely a better response to any pandemic, and learning from also making mistakes during this pandemic, because just like Karen said, there's currently chances that another one happen at some point. And if we learn enough from this response of COVID-19, then hopefully whenever there is another one, then this time we will be more prepared, and there will be already relationships that have been strengthened by this current one that we're going through right now. And yeah.
When I hear like our cultures and the similarities that we have, it just makes me think about like when you live in Canada, you're so used to growing up with people who look different than you, different religions, backgrounds, and you almost get really protective over them when something's happening to their homelands. So for example, I have a lot of friends who are Indian, and what I love is that is it called diaspora? I was gonna say diaspora, but the diaspora, you know, here we really show up for each other. So when we heard about what was happening in India, a lot of people were pressuring the government to act, and it wasn't just Indian people doing it. Of course, it was everybody doing it for them, because you know, I have friends who have inspired me growing up, right? It kind of goes back to that culture where it's like, I have friends who will put me in a sari and I'll put them in a dira. And like, we can't just show up for each other when it's fun, when it's a wedding. We got to show up to each other when it's like important and when it matters the most. So I think it's just such a beautiful thing when you have a similar culture and you understand each other. You really push for each other and you fight for each other.
That is so beautiful.
Sorry, I just want to say one thing, and then one of the most important parts about our communities is our food. I don't actually think people realize how there's commonness but different language. Like the roti or the chapati or the tortilla, right? Like they're all used across multiple areas, or cassava as an example.
True.
You know, it's a primary ingredient from India actually all the way to Latin America. Like I mean, there's unrealized connections that we have in our food. Now, wouldn't it be great if we could just put vaccines on that? And we would have solved many issues, right? So I think we should always look at, and I'm going to end on this note, East African culture revolves around food. In fact, a lot of African and Indian cultures revolve around sitting at a table and having the conversations. You know, that can drag on for hours and hours. And I think that is like one of the things that binds us together is actually the food and conversations.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I hope the people that are at home are eating some food right now, or at least they're gonna like go get some nice food. Any last words as we're gonna wrap up? What calls to action would you give to people right now? Just call to action.
Yeah, I would just say find what inspires you and what you love, and find a way to use it to help people. For me, journalism was something that I've loved my whole life, and it's something that meant a lot to me. And I always knew that I would use that to help others, whether that means ethically reporting on what's happening in India or other parts of the world that mainstream media fails at doing. That's kind of how I do my part in society. So whether you like dancing or cooking, like find a way to use that to spread the message or to help people.
Thank you.
Yeah, literally, I would piggyback on what she's saying. Me being an artist, I always use my art to send messages, and I can maybe share it exclusively here that I'm planning to work on a documentary about the impact of COVID-19. So, and especially being focused on those categories of the population that have been the most affected by COVID, because again, also, just like I mentioned, I saw those maps showing how Toronto, there was so much inequity in terms of like access to whether the vaccine or any other like, you know, care related to COVID, right? So I'm planning, to work on a documentary and use my platform and voice to give a platform to those people from those communities that have been seriously affected by the pandemic.
We'll be looking out.
Yeah.
Be deliberate about making change without affecting your morals or values.
Wow. Yeah. This has been beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much to AfroFest for putting on this event. We want to thank our partners. We want to thank the Gut Institute. As well as we want to thank Music Africa, Maichi Platform, and Yukai Projects for the partnership. Thank you to Taylor K for opening up today's event. Thank you to all our panelists. You've been amazing. Borelson, Karim, Osebe. And we just want to finally say, here's a call to action. Where can you help for COVID-19? We need your help today. Help out in India, help out in Africa, East Africa. Wherever it is in the world, wherever possible, help today. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome, my name is Jermaine Henry, and I am here with AfroFest leader, Peter. Peter, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I feel blessed to be a part of AfroFest this year, even though it's a unique way. I remember going by Woodbine Beach and always going in. There'll be drumming, there'll be art all around. Just, it's a vibe, cultural vibe.
Yes, it is.
How are y'all managing with COVID? How are you gonna do this year?
Believe me, it has been really, really difficult, especially transitioning from an event where you have hundreds of thousands of
Canada's #1 African barbecue, the Suya Spot. Serving and satisfying your Suya needs from multiple locations across the GTA, including Scarborough, Toronto, Woodbridge, and Mississauga. Also located in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Visit any location today or stay home and order through
DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Skip the Dishes.
For more information, check out our website at www.thesuyaspot.com or call the toll-free line at +1 866 448 7892. The Suya Spot. You built it, now use it. Vous l'avez construit, utilisez-le.
Flex as well, who's recently, just today, signed on with the record label. Now, how are you feeling about signing on?
I feel great. I feel special. I mean, signing to a new record label, Dreammakers Entertainment. It's a good feeling. Yeah.
Excited?
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Good. And how about you as the founder of the record label? How are you feeling signing a new artist?
Today's a special day, right? Like I say, 11/11. I do believe in the universal numbers, and I chose this day particularly. It was like a sign, right? But I'm excited. I'm excited to see what we have to do, and we have done amazing so far. So signing D-Flex today, bringing him on board to this team, I'm excited because I'm bringing a little bit of Afrobeat flavor to my label right now. I've been doing a lot of reggae artists and stuff, producing a lot of reggae songs, but now it's like, all right, I'm going back home. This is Africa, right?
I like that. Now, speaking of Afrobeats flavor, what was it particularly about D-Flex that you just had to bring him on board and start representing him?
Well, I'm a very picky producer, executive producer, manager, or whatever. But he's very talented. I should say that he's very talented, and I met him a few years ago. And one of the few characteristics that I point out to him is that